All right, it's 1 o'clock, so we'll call our meeting of the HCC Organizational Focus Committee to order. President, myself, John McLaughlin, and John Hedden is here. We don't need a formal agenda. There's no members of the public, no comment. We do have an agenda posted, and I don't think we need to necessarily follow it formally. So John M., I guess what I was hoping we could do, Val Oliver will hopefully be with us next week. And best wishes to her. Do a quick update of the Nantucket Advisory Board just for the minute, our own minutes, kind of like a committee update. And then I was thinking maybe we could talk about under Building with Nantucket in mind and the other organizational matters of concern. We could talk about fences and maybe getting a recommendation together for the group. And just postpone the questionnaire discussion until we get the other members' input. We're waiting on a couple of forms still, I think 2 or 3. So John, you want to update us on yesterday with Nantucket Advisory Board? For the
No, discussion, no decision was reached.
Yeah.
That's what it all. There was discussion of the perimeter of Nantucket Historic District's area, if we approve it in the future. And we both settled with that. That's over with. Now we can go into details, I think, of which I can start off if you want, go into the appendix. And we got to do the appendix, and we got to do the.
Okay. What I was hoping we could do, because we need to get the input from the other thing that they decided, we discussed, and they decided that Nantucket Advisory would take up is reviewing the Appendix G, the rules and regulations from Building with Nantucket in mind for their proposed Nantucket district, historic district, and for the area, and coming up with a list of do's and don'ts as guidelines based on the historic fabric of Nantucket. So there's no sense in my mind in us going through a list of Appendix G for Nantucket until we get their feedback. I don't want to put it off, but we're just going to be spinning our wheels if we talk about it. So I was hoping we'd just get that on the record. That's the update on the Nantucket Advisory Board. They're going to be working to get their members' input over the course of the next input and get it consolidated and reported back to us over the course of the next 2 weeks so that we can review it and then give a recommendation to the full commission. John, is that's what you got out of the meeting yesterday too, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, how did it? I mean, you developed a boundary line.
Well, what we were gonna do is use their proposed map and then bring that with their proposed guidelines and any rules based on the Appendix G of for the old historic district and the Wisconsin district. Right. And we were going to kind of get that from them, review it in its totality, make any propose any changes and make any recommendations to them and discuss it with them, and then finalize it to send to the full board. I'd like to start getting something done here. It seems it's kind of frustrating. We're trying, and I think the problem with part of it is it's the nature of the beast. People tell me that it's just the way it is.
Some headwind with Nantucket, and
at least
it was a good meeting yesterday, and I think that's a big thing to take on.
I hope so.
Pushing through with it, starting right now. So.
Well, I was hoping that maybe what we could do is this is all. The other thing is this is all kind of like trial run vetting how we're doing things for the bigger project, which we have to undertake soon.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that maybe you had actually brought up kind of separating out some of the subjects for applications so that they could be processed more efficiently and they could be heard by the commission more efficiently. I think it's more effective, obviously, for everyone, for you, for staff, I mean,
Right,
for,
right.
for applicants and for the commission. So what I was thinking is maybe we could do is we keep a parallel track going with at least these two things to get, so that we're getting a couple things done at once.
Right.
If for some reason something stalls, we can be working on the other.
Right, right.
So, John, are you okay with that? What we'll do is we'll start talking about a recommendation on how to process fence applications, and I think it's a good idea with the Sachem's Path being a topic with a bunch of applicants coming in from there and some concern from the commission.
Right.
Are you okay with we can actually start talking about fence stuff in order to form a recommendation?
That's what I'm hoping we can do. Yeah.
Okay, so,
Get the stuff here out of the way. But here,
all right,
So
so,
would this be guidelines, or is more focusing on like St. James Path and those sorts of developments?
that's a good question. I'm hoping that what it is it's both, so that it's a guideline and maybe even some rules and regulations that we would make a recommendation on, or make a recommendation on how to go about it. And I wanted to get feedback from you guys on it because, I made some notes. So, okay, let me just see if I can put this in perspective. So we talk about fence a lot. I kind of joke around at our HTC meetings that it's our Achilles heel, because we can spend literally, it seems like a lot more time on a fence than we do on some other things.
Right.
So interestingly enough, fence is mentioned 97 times within Building with Nantucket in mind, and fences are mentioned on some 17 pages in context. I've reviewed all 17 pages. It's been a while since I've done that for a particular topic. And John, I'm going to give just a summary of what's in there as a reminder to you. I know you've read this probably a million times, but it's interesting because my recollection of what's in the guidebook is not always what I say at a meeting, or I think at a meeting, or what I see when I'm out. And I think there's some disconnect in between, John, what we talk about at the meeting and what commissioners think, and what's in the guidebook. So I just want to hit the high points, which is that, so obviously it lays out the use of fence, and the guidebook lays out the use of fence in different areas. It does indicate that in some instances it provides hard line, yes and no's, and in most instances they're not yes and no's, they're guidelines. It does talk about, it does encourage use in town and on the relatively small lots, the use of fences that are less or equal to 4 feet to delineate street space and create a rhythm along street space, and to demarc the public and transition space, so from your road, the sidewalk, to your front yard. And then it goes on to say that fences and hedge are preferred ways to create private space in your yards, to create and maintain private space. And again, that's in town and on smaller lots, and up to 10,000, I think it was up to the R10, which is 10,000 square feet roughly. And then it goes on to say, obviously, what we all know is that in the less densely developed areas, the open plains, the moors, the seashore areas, Glacial Valley, wherever we're doing development where it's less dense development, that fences should divide the landscape, are discouraged, except for where they have a functional necessity. So it doesn't say they're prohibited, it just says they're discouraged. The idea is to maintain the sense of openness. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, how do we get past, look, we're going to have a recommendation, but what I'm trying to figure out is, how do we get past, when we sit in a meeting, we all have these kind of preconceived notions of what the guidebook says.
Right.
And what it means. And we all have in our mind a picture of what a Nantucket fence is. And in some instances, obviously in the guidebook it says what the predominant fences are. But it goes on to say that there are plenty of fences that add charm and character because they're not those same fences.
Yep.
And that they should be ruled on a case-by-case basis. So what I'm wondering is, do we do we maybe go through the guidebook and call out the text or put it all in one place that has to do with fences under each heading? So, for instance, in town, and then everything it says about a fence with a page number, and then outside town, and then open space, so that everyone can read it and we can literally be on the same page before we discuss it? Or are we going to sit down and discuss what people think the guidebook says, or their interpretation, or what they've been practicing over the years? So what do you guys think about that?
Well, you're on the right track, but what I'm saying is that myself, I'll give you my opinion is that we can go so far. We can't take something like this and take this out and talk about it. Because then you get through talking about settled fences, someone says, how about them roof colors? How about it? You should start here one at a time.
We
Go
are.
through it, you know?
We're
in
we're
other
starting
words,
with this one.
no, what I'm saying is start with roofs. Because we got to go down this thing and back out. If we're going to jump around with different things, you know, and formulating our opinions of the rules and regulations. This here, all right, I'm going to get into it. Fences, railings, and steps, okay, shall be made of wood. That's all it says, okay? Fine, they'll be made out of wood. Brick steps with wrought iron, whatever. Instead of doing this one and finishing this on the three of us, the four of us, on our opinions, and then put it aside and go to another item. We got to start with this item and go right down as they are on the list, because this is already printed up. And I think, you know, if we're going to discuss rules and regulations, which is not, it's rules and regulations, not the guideline. So you have to keep the word guideline out of it until you go to the working on the book itself.
Okay.
I think.
I get what you're saying, and I understand why you want to do it in a certain way, which, you know, I respect that. The problem with that is what the commission has asked us to do, what we talked about at one of the last, not the last meeting, but the meeting before, when we took 3 meetings ago, was to bring in something that's kind of a priority. Now, we're currently working on roofs. We're waiting on information for roofs. We've got requests out for samples. We have a bunch in the office. We're waiting for a few more to come in. Fences came up. John brought up fences and sheds. If we go through and do this by ourselves, each one, we're not going to get something to them. You know what I mean? We're going to go to them with a whole thing, with a whole packet,
Right.
and say, here, and it's never going to get processed. We have had things on our agenda that we never get to because the meetings, we have a lot on our agenda otherwise in terms of processing applications for people in the community. So what I was trying to do was get in front of them a little piece at a time, so we can get their feedback, we can get something resolved, and we can move on to the next one. Or we can move on to a group of them.
Okay, all right. But
Is
all
that-
right, last night,
Yep.
the fences come up. Right, we had a long discussion on fences, you know, about because of that. Well, my thoughts automatically were, you know, we better listen to what happened last night. Right. Now that guy wanted 6'6", okay, and where he put it, he ended up. He's got half the yard, sidewall, the side fences, you know, and there's nothing. What he calls his backyard. He goes to the other property, you know, where he is. As I said, coming down here, I went back and looked the second time from Dockwater Drive,
Yep.
and you can see the whole backyard. His bushes are pretty thin, what he's got there. He wanted the fence along the back and up the sides, okay? All right, we got others in there that are 5 and 1. Well, what we got to do is sit down and take up, not just that, take up one thing at a time and go, when you get to fences, we'll discuss fences. Right now, we're set up here, go to, we'll say roofs, all right, we can do, the 4 of us can sit down and discuss roofs. And we come up, we set that aside. We make a decision on roofs. And then we go to the next one. Until we do this, you can't go to another step and jump down here.
Why?
Do fences.
why don't we do them alphabetically? Fences come before roofs. Why should roofs be first?
Because this way this is taken out of the guidebook.
Right, but I mean, we're trying to work with what assets we have in terms of people who are here and
They want it now.
and the pressing issue in front of us right now at the HDC is fences. Roofs we have a handle on. We know that roofs are what the policy is in the old historic district, what colors are in the old historic district. You know what I mean? Like we have that kind of in place. We talked about broadening out what colors could be used, but we can't broaden them out until we know exactly what the samples look like or what the shingle looks like, and we can't do that until we have all the samples. And as a matter of fact, I emailed another. Bear with me. No, I thought I might. I was hoping I had an update on it. But in any event, I think what I'm suggesting is not different than what you're suggesting. I'm just saying let's do it out of order relative to what's the most important thing in front of the commission right now, so that we can help them put things to bed. Because if we can, the other thing is this: if we can free up a half an hour discussion time by, over the course of the next few meetings, getting fences resolved in terms of a policy, even just a policy, not necessarily rules,
No,
then
This
we'll
is not
have
a
time
policy.
to, I understand, I'm just saying, then we'll have time in the meetings to take up bigger things
okay.
about the process. The thing is we can't just focus on what the rules are, because we need to focus on the guidelines too. So now talking about the fences, in order to give the commission a well-rounded recommendation, we need to look at all the different issues that are involved with fences.
Okay.
What used to happen, what's in the guidebook, what used to happen, and how we all see it, and where we're going, what our recommendation is consistent with that.
Okay, well, while we are discussing, say, fences,
Yeah.
all right. Now, next Tuesday when we meet, somebody comes in and they have 5 applications for solar. Now, we have no guidelines. If solar is solar until we say yes or no. We're going to make it a rule or regulation, not a guideline. So if you take and we say, okay, solar's got to be same color as the roof, black, none of that metal strip, all right? You set your policy. There it is. Now that's all it says is those 3 things, all right? And then you look back down here, which is voted in 1993. The commission reserves the right to vary for a good cause, any of the above. That should disappear. There's no, once we do fences, okay? These are the fences we were going to propose approval to the commission when we get down the road. The commission sits down on and reads what they have to say, then they read what we have to say, then we say, okay, now it's time. We've done everything there is, we've all had our say, now we've got to go with what do you want to do with rules and regulations of fences. And then we decide, out of town, we say no fence over 4 feet. Use that for an example. Okay, no fence goes over. But God, I want 6.5 because my neighbor's got one. With these new policies, this is what's going to be hard and fast in the old historic area, not down Surfside Road. I'm talking about the old HTC. That's about all I am interested in.
So all I'm suggesting is we start with the fences and let's do that. Let's get them that information. And then the next time we meet, we can talk about something else. But, I mean, we got to keep in mind, too, our job isn't to sit here and make the rules and the regulations.
Yeah.
It's to look at what's involved with the different ones. Some of them are more involved. If you want to, I don't have any issue personally, my own opinion, in trying to take a little bite out of the apple and get something done, even if it's something that matures a little bit later. If it's as simple as in town, instead of it just being a guide, the rule is that you don't have more than a 3-foot. Currently the guideline is in town, only in the historic district. no fence more than 4 feet tall in the front, and it shouldn't be board. And that's a guideline, it's not a rule. But there's no reason not to make that a rule that I can see as a recommendation to say to the commission, look, we talk about this stuff quite a bit. Is this something you feel should be a rule so that it can simply be pointed at? This is the rule. The applicant knows what to expect, whether they're a homeowner, a designer, an architect, or a fence builder. They know that from the front of the house to the railings at the steps, you know, along the sidewalk, into the railings at the step, to the house, along the side of the property, that you can have. It doesn't necessarily say that it can't be iron or something else. It has to be in keeping with the design of the home, the style of the home. But you can have a 3-foot fence up to a 3-foot high fence, or maybe it's taller. The guidebook says 4 feet is okay. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just saying that would be our recommendation number 1. Our recommendation number 2 would be that you can have a fence of a certain height in the back along the rear sides of your property, from the house, the front plane of the house, back, and around the perimeter of your property, in town, to hide private space. And then I think that there's going to be, so I'm not going to get into the height yet because I think it takes us off the track. So that would be recommendation number 2. It would either be fence or some type of a hedge.
Yeah, a building, yeah.
Right, so that's in town. The other lots in the relatively densely developed areas like R5 and R10 would be, I would think, the same thing. Then in the other areas, it would be, and we would say that and perhaps what we would say there is that in some of these areas, based upon the character of what's the surrounding area, the fence along the front should be split rail based on certain criteria. That would be a recommendation. They decide whether it's a rule or it's a guideline.
Okay.
And then it would be the same thing across the front, down to the house, the front plane of the house, the primary plane of the house, and then from there back, you're entitled to put up fencing subject to whatever the restriction is.
Right, so you say maximum.
We're going to talk about height.
Maximum 4 feet.
We're going to talk about height in a minute because we're going to
Okay.
disagree on that. And I don't want to get sidetracked.
No, you got the show. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. So that would be. So we'd have a set of recommendations for in town. We'd have a second set of recommendations for outside of town that are densely developed. The idea being that the whole idea of the fence was to create uniformity and a sense of rhythm from these structures that are homes to the next one, so that they're connected, but they're not physically connected. But through visual landscape and hardscape, they are, and it creates a sense of rhythm and uniformity in a good way, without it being homogeneous. The same thing is encouraged outside of town where it's densely developed. So the rule, I would think, would follow, right?
Okay.
Then outside of that, we would say if it's only necessary for, if it's in the front, it's split rail, and otherwise it's only a fence if it's necessary for utility purposes. So we're not changing it much of anything, but we're putting it all in one place so everyone is aware of it and we don't have to have big, long discussions about it. I don't think we're having big, long discussions unnecessarily. I think we're having them because we haven't all agreed on the circumstances where they should always apply. And by virtue of that fact, it's kind of inefficient use of everyone's time all the way around, everybody who's involved. So we would have those in front of them. We would say, which ones do you want to be rules? Which ones do you want to be guidelines? They're already in the guidelines, but we're just kind of, part of this process is taking stuff that's in the book and reviewing it in today's time, and restating it. I'm not saying changing the words, but just reaffirming it.
Right.
So that gives us a chance to get the fences out of the way.
Okay.
Boom, we move on to the next thing.
Okay. Now,
Are you okay with that or no? If you're not,
Yeah,
tell me. That's why we're here.
I'm okay. It's a good suggestion. There are 20 items here.
Right.
Right? So if you do 2 items a week, Just the four of us. We do four, that's gonna be 5 weeks down the road before we finish just this.
Yeah.
All right? Then we go to this. That could possibly be, that's gonna have a lot of changes, colors. That's gonna be a problem, with us.
Okay,
But if we work on these fences, we decide only on these, this will be made for the inside the 3 HTC areas. That's all this is for. Outside is another story.
Right.
But now we got stuck with this one down on Surfside Road because that guy pushed too, And
yeah.
we released it. We shouldn't have done what we did. We should have said, no,
well,
it's inappropriate for the area.
okay, so you're talking about height. I want to say two things, please. One is that if we go through this exercise, we should go through this exercise for everywhere on the island.
Right.
There's no sense saying it's just Old Historic District, because otherwise we're still going to have these discussions, just like when those folks come in for a fence, just using them as an example, not to pick on them.
Yeah.
We're going to have the same discussions we've been having. It's not that the discussions aren't worthwhile, it's just that it could be done more efficiently by having the discussion in advance and then applying. We don't have that many different situations that happen on Nantucket with fence. You either have homes in town, you either have homes in either the old historic districts where there's pretty much a good set of rules and guidelines in our collective practice. Then you have areas that are densely developed that are outside of there, which are typically R5 and R10. If you're using zoning discussion, to define the areas, they're 5,000 or 10,000 square foot lots or less. And those fit into that definition. Those are about 5,000 square feet, my guess is, maybe a little less. So if we set a rule and some guidelines for that area, for any area that's that density, then they come in and they follow the rules and the guidelines. It's done. We don't have to talk about them as a particular project. We just deal with the whole thing island-wide.
Now you just use the word guidelines.
We can. I think some. My suggestion is some things are. I don't think you can have. I don't think everything can be a rule. Because
no, fine.
you know what I mean. Like we can't say it has to be wood, because the guidebook and the act and history tell us that not every fence is wood. So that would be in the guidelines. The rule would be height. Things that we know we being HDC as a collective organization over time have determined, but it also needs to be based on, in my opinion, what the book says. So there's a lot of people who did a lot of research for this through the NHA and whatnot, and I don't think we should just be deciding based on, look, my preference shouldn't be what goes in there. It should be what historically has been there, and that's what we're trying to protect, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I think the other thing is, I think if we do, looking at Appendix G, roofs, roof colors, roofing material, gutters, leaders and downspouts, all that could be done together, in my opinion.
Okay. Now, you just brought up, rang a bell, which we don't do a lot with me. You just rang a bell. Gutters. Some people want gutters, some people don't.
Right.
So there's the end of that. Now, last night I noticed, I forget where it was, the golf course, okay?
But wait a minute, can you clarify that? Some people want gutters, some don't. There it is. What does that mean?
Some houses have gutters on them, some don't.
Right. And
It's not mandatory to have a gutter.
Right, but homes that have gutters.
Okay, all right, so this guy owns this one, all right? And he puts his fascia board on. It comes down here. Ever since the first book come out, it said right here at the end here, as you look at this end of it, the most we could have, this is still on the books, is 12-inch overhang. 6-inch starts with a gutter. And you can't go beyond 12 inches. Some people box it, use a box jet, it's called. All right?
Yeah.
And they put a box jet up there and put the gutter on the outside. So that's 5.5 to 5.5 inches. So that's 11 inches. You can't exceed that. Now they had it last night out there. They got, I'm gonna say, damn close to over a foot, hanging off of the restaurant, whatever it is.
Right.
Okay, golf club, yeah. So if the guidebook has a recommendation, well, we can do one of two things. We can say, in the old historic districts, you gotta have a 6-inch to a gutter. If you're gonna use a box jet, you can go up to 12, but you gotta make sure there's a box jet there to back up the the gutter hanging off the box.
Okay.
So, in other words, if we do that, we say, okay, that is in the old historic area, no matter what you build. Because whenever what you build, you're not gonna get a trophy home in the old historic districts of the 3 districts. So you gotta look at this, say, all right, this is what you gotta do. All right, and there it is, there's a policy set, right?
Okay.
Right, oh yeah. We voted a policy. Outside of town, if you want a gutter, you put a gutter on your fascia, or you put it 6 inches up.
Okay.
And then you go with that, and then you use
So
the
I get what you're saying. You're giving us your preference based on your understanding of how it's always been done. What I would say is, as a facilitator in this regard, the guidebook doesn't say anything about, the only thing it says is that historically they're made of wood, circular square. They should, that type should be used on the historic buildings and additions and new structures. Any leaders of metal should be painted to inconspicuously match the cornice and trim. And that's all it says about gutters. So if we want to so in this instance, you're bringing up your understanding of how it is or it should be historically.
Or it was, yeah.
Right. So then we would say, okay, we want to get some feedback from a local historian on these topics. So we're making accurate decisions.
Right.
So that would go on the list for a historian or 3 historians. I don't know. I mean, whatever it is to give us feedback. Or people could go to the NHA and get pictures and look at it. And, my point is, look, I don't want to make this any more difficult than it has to be. We all have other stuff we got to be doing in life. But at the same time, if we're going to do it, we can't just, my feeling is we can't just base it on our individual opinions and come to a compromise, because we may not be right, and we're making decisions that are going to affect the way Nantucket looks for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, one exception.
Okay.
You said gutters should be made of wood.
Yeah.
You didn't finish the sentence.
That's what it says in here.
Oh, yeah. This was a copy.
Oh yeah. I'm not
This
talking
is
about the appendix G. I'm talking about in the guidebook portion,
Guidebook, well, the
not the
guidebook.
appendix.
Basically, my thinking's always been old HTC. That's what bothers me. You know.
Yeah,
On the town, but anyway.
We got to protect it. I'm with you.
Gutters shall be made of wood or copper for brick buildings. Now, we're putting copper downspouts and gutters in the old HTC on Milk Street, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be copper.
So this is like one of those things that we could pick off and
Right.
make a recommendation, and then maybe, I don't know, John. What do you guys think about we would meet? Like maybe we get 3 of these things together and meet on a Thursday.
Wednesday.
Well, we meet on a Wednesday. I guess we can
Every
have.
Wednesday, yeah.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about with the whole commission.
Oh, I got you. Okay, all right. Go ahead.
I don't know. I'm asking you. What do you guys think if we get these together and then we try and schedule it for a Thursday, so we're not losing time?
Right, yeah, with application.
Yeah.
Oh, their brain power too. If you keep missing meetings,
Yeah.
nothing's happening,
Yeah.
Right.
So-
It's hard. It's going to be hard to nitpick everything. But,
So-
but the guidebook is the main thing. After we do these are ready to go. So this covers anything in the old HCC. Once we do it, and we send it to the commission. The commission votes it. Okay, these are going to be our probably our strong policies in the old HCC. Now, somebody go, what about out of town? Well, we'll worry about that right down here. We have
Okay.
the right to make a change.
So I have two things I want to push back on. Okay.
Huh?
I want to push back on 2 things you've said, because I think if we have, I think if we can each represent our own opinions, we're going to have a more robust thought process.
Oh, yeah.
My research on fences in the historic district, and even in the guidebook, doesn't say a fence should be only 4 feet tall. The only place it says a fence should be no taller than 4 feet is in the front of a house. I don't believe, it does say, it also says in the guidebook that a fence shouldn't be, a board fence shouldn't be more than 4 feet tall. And it says that a fence, unless it's commercial, shouldn't be taller than 6 feet tall. I believe, that we have this thing in our head that you can't have a fence that's 6 feet tall. And I disagree with it. I think, personally, I don't think there should be a fence that goes from here to the two fairgrounds that's 6 feet tall. I think it should be broken up by landscaping. But I think if you have a need, like maybe you have kids or a dog or something, and you have ladders, or you have whatever you have in your yard, you have a need for privacy, and that's what that fence has historically always been used for. And we had a fence. John, do you guys remember the application that came in from, it was downtown, it was the old historic district. It was on
86 Main Street.
Was it Main Street?
Mm-hmm.
And the historian
Yep.
talked about the very fact that taller solid fences were used to protect not only the privacy of someone's yard and their personal use, but also to block the utilitarian aspects of what's in the yard from other people so that they don't have to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So you say there shouldn't be a fence more than 4 feet tall, and I'm just saying to you why I think differently.
Okay, I can respect that.
Which we would talk about with the commission.
Yeah.
Everyone would have their own opinion, but the thing is we all have our own opinions. We have what's in the guidebook, and we should also be looking at what really happened historically.
Yeah. And there's
Right.
evidence of, taller board fences that came in with that application, I think.
Yeah.
Archive. There was taller fences than 4 feet, down in that area.
And so let me ask you this, just in terms of resources, I know you have a full plate, but is that something that you have time or interest in kind of pulling some images together or some?
Yeah.
I mean, is that something you would be, like, if we go through and do this in the way that we're talking about now?
Yeah.
Because what I think we should be doing is getting this together so that we have an historian, perhaps even a preservationist, as we've discussed, who's looking at it and looking at it in the context of the guidebook and looking at it in the context of everything we do and how to rewrite it. We being the HCC makes policy decisions, but we're not going to rewrite this book ourselves. I'm not interested. I can't. It's not something I have any time to do. You don't have time to do. No one. I mean, we're all interested in getting it done, but we need to use time efficiently for the public. But it starts with doing it in little pieces like we're talking about now. And it starts with maybe if John went down and we decided we were going to talk about fence. Well, let's make a decision. Everything's frickin' theoretical around here.
Okay, now you went to gutters, that's good.
Well, you went to gutters, but that's okay. What about, we talked about fences. And I'm just trying to think, fences, railings, and steps. I mean, I think we could look at those three together. And then what else kind of fits? There's nothing else that fits with those.
You got here, you picked this one, fences. There'll be wood. Brick steps with wrought iron railings, stone steps and wrought iron fences are approved on a case-by-case basis when appropriate to specific styles. That's the only answer for these two is specific style.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a brick building, you want cast iron. If you've got stone foundation, you have iron or cast iron, But as I say, it shouldn't say brick pavers, walkways. Yeah. How'd I just leave that? Fence approved on the case by case when appropriate in specific
To the
styles.
specific
Now,
architectural
using those
style.
two words, well, anything can be a specific style.
Mhm.
You know, so you know, as far as leaving that in there, it's better to take it out and leave the decision up to the commission of what criteria hits this without specific styles. You know, we're gonna have to take each one of these apart and put it back together.
Right, but, okay, but you realize that you've just kind of contradicted yourself, because, and I'm not calling you out on it, I'm just saying, in terms of the thought process, if we leave in here that it's a case-by-case basis, and then we take out that we can change our minds for good cause, why would we take this out? And why would we take this out, and that a decision can be based on good cause and leave in a case-by-case basis? It's basically the same thing. I would feel more comfortable saying that, and we're getting into the nitty-gritty of how we would represent it ourselves when we talk with the commission, but my feeling would be more along the lines of wrought iron railings, stone steps, and wrought iron fences are approved when appropriate to specific styles of architecture, so that if someone came in,
By case, yeah.
right, then someone came in and they said, oh, look, I have a picture that shows this Greek revival with wrought iron treatment on the railings of the steps.
Right.
And this is historically, and I can show you a picture from the NHA of this home and this home and this home, and it may not be how that architectural style was typically addressed around the world at that period, but here on Nantucket, I'm making the case that that was how it was addressed. Then they've proven that it's compatible with the architectural style and it could be approved.
They gotta approve it, we don't.
Well, I'm not saying
Yeah.
we approve it, I'm saying when an applicant comes in front of the HDC, if it were written up that way, that it's incumbent upon someone to come in and prove why it meets the rule or the guideline.
Okay.
But it's also incumbent upon them in a way that's reasonable. It's not like some crazy hoop to jump through.
Well, this says two things differently.
Yes.
That's what we gotta wipe out.
Yeah, I'm with you.
One specific item, and I'll use the word item.
So which ones do we want to, so we got fences, railings, and steps that we can talk about and try and
Okay.
resolve.
We take out case-by-case basis.
Okay, so,
And approved on, how you do it, iron fences are approved, and wrought iron fences are approved. Take this out.
John, these are so nice, I don't want to write.
When appropriate to specific styles, there, that covers that.
Yeah, I got that part.
That's what they're there for. So, Steve.
Yeah, what page? 181?
It's in the back.
I didn't bring my pen. Oh, I did bring my pencil.
Why do you use a pencil?
Because I can erase it when I want to look at something or if I change my mind, or if you change your mind, which never happens.
I hope not.
All right, I already got a bookmark.
The trouble I keep telling, I don't mind a minute. I've been here too long. I am stuck with the old historic districts area, which I grew up in. The whole island was not a historic districts area, not till 1955. So before that, I was lucky. I grew up in the period I knew what the neighborhoods were.
1973
But
was when the whole island was a historic district. The entire island.
yeah, right. In 55 they started HCC.
55 was
Yeah.
OHD in Wisconsin.
Take you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm slipping too. Won't be long. I'll be the hell out of here. Somebody else will worry about it.
Oh, don't say that. Enough to do. So we have basically, let's just recap, fences, railing, and steps. There'll be three, our recommendation will be that there's 3 areas that the rules apply to, that the rules may include materials, which would be, as is listed, wood, unless wrought iron is appropriate to the fences and railings, is appropriate to this specific style of architecture. That's in the historic districts. And and we know that in Wisconsin is a matter of general applicability. There's nothing that's going to be wrought iron. That's, like in a lot of those streets. So that's kind of like a self-monitoring, self-policing solution. We know that what we've discussed is that the dense areas, which we'd use, for example, R1 R10, R5, R10 would have similar rules with respect to height. And then I can see a vigorous debate about what height is acceptable or not on the privacy fence.
Yeah.
And is that something you would be able to put together what would your timeline, John H., be for putting together some insight from images and different things? Again, the idea being a robust discussion based on historical fact, not just...
Right.
Because okay, so I'm just going to play devil's advocate. The guidebook says that you shouldn't have a board and batten fence over 4 feet tall in the old historic district.
Right.
Well, we know that was historically, that's not correct.
Right, there's, evidence of other taller ordinances.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that they should all be
A little
taller.
research, I'm not sure when I can have it.
Well, that's what I'm asking. When do you
depending on
think...
how deep I go into it, but,
I don't know. What do you think would be... I think... I don't know. I mean... I think we could go as deep as you wanted to.
Yeah.
But...
it just seems... I don't know how 6 feet became
Yeah.
the standard, but how did a 6-foot fence become the standard? So my question would be, so what should be the policies outside of town?
Okay, here's the point I'm going to make now. This is the state police in North Livingston. I stated it before. This guy owned this house, L-shaped. He wanted 5-in-1 fence on all 3 sides
Yep.
and in the front. Well, he was told he can start here. You go 4 feet on the sides. It's 6 feet around, as long as it's not on a road.
Right.
Right, as long as it's not a road beside it. So this guy here, he ended up, he put it, I think, 3 or 4 feet from the house over. In the front, he had all pickets here. Then he had the board fencing here. So in other words, there's a house over here too, but you can see partially through it. Right. You can see this side here, but it's from this house point back. You want the front of the house, we'll say, what do you call it, clear.
Facade,
Basically
yeah,
clear.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
shrubbery, whatever they want. This is what happened here, and we started doing this, probably 20 years ago maybe, of doing a calculation. We have not laid it down in black and white, but you pass things on to new members, and they learn.
Well, what's the calculation based on?
The calculation would be that, he's going to be, he can put on the property line, there's no problem there. If this is going back to here, to here, up to the front of the house, and there's no streets, you can say, all right, we allow 6-foot fence here, and up here, you got to be 4 feet across here, and the front picket, if there's pickets here, match it.
From what I've reviewed and the pictures I've seen, that's historically correct.
The guideline.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the guidelines. The problem is we don't all have it in our mind
That's
way.
been the verbal policy.
Yeah.
That's right. It came out as a guideline when we done it that day, for this guy.
Yeah.
So after that, you pick it up, the new members pick it up, what's going on.
So that was an unwritten policy, kind of.
Oh.
Yeah.
But it is in the guidebook.
Does that talk about that sighting of a fence?
Well, it doesn't get into it. One of the issues that I have with the guidebook is that fences, the way it's written for someone like me, the way I process information, I want to look up fences. So instead of going to the index, I'll go to the index to get an idea of where it is in the book.
Yeah.
But I want to go and find it in the book, and then I want to find out everything I can find out about fences with respect to the rules, regulations, and the guidelines. So they're all in one place. Whether it's
Right.
heading is historic district,
Right.
districts, densely developed areas,
Yeah.
open areas.
Yeah.
It's all right there because in the book, the way it's written, it's nicely written and it's got a lot of information in it. But it's difficult if you're trying to process information on a specific subject. You've got to jump around. The index doesn't tell you that fences for different areas are in different places. You actually have to read the whole description
Right,
of the plan for that whole area.
right,
For example, the open plains. But if you're just designing a fence,
mm-hmm,
you don't, in today's world, people don't read all that information. They want to be able to flip to a page and see what it is for fences.
Right.
So I think if it's codified and indexed in a way that can be accessed efficiently, it will be used more, and it will also be something we can use consistently. Because amongst the members, you can say, well, page 88 lists all the things you can do with a fence.
right,
We should remember that, I would suggest as a member.
Right.
Or someone else might say that
Right.
at a certain point. To your question, it does say in different locations that fences are encouraged in town on relatively small lots, that along the front, they should be encouraged, or some type of a hedge, less than equal to 4 feet to delineate the street space and to create a rhythm and to connect the buildings. And then it goes on to say that fences and plant material hedge are encouraged to for demarcation of public, for private spaces. So your backyard, in essence, where taller fence, less than 6 feet, can be used. It says 6 feet can be used in commercial areas.
mm-hmm,
Taller fence and hedge are encouraged to create and maintain private space. But you have to look in three different places to get that
yeah,
information.
yeah, commercial,
Right, so to your question, there's not actually a diagram in the book that shows the concept of a fence. It shows the concept of a fence relative to the public space, the transition space, and the
Mhm.
private space, but it doesn't say heights or anything necessarily right
doesn't
there.
mention any of
So
that.
again, it's about putting it all in one place.
Right,
So
and it also could be updated if this was to stay. Where it goes over fence types in the back of the book. You know, you have a picket, which we call type 1, type 2 capped, and then a type 3. And we could, that'd be a good spot to add 5-1.
right.
If that's how
In the
things go,
details,
you
so
know.
plus illustrations. Okay, so if you guys flip to, just a for instance of what I think we're trying to address, is if you flip to page 62, the lower left corner,
Lower left-hand corner, right.
okay, so you have to read about hedges and fence, about site planning for new lots. And it talks, there's basically a paragraph that talks about site planning, and it talks about the concept of separating public, semi-public, and private areas and transitioning them along the street edge, and that it's imperative, and that it should be coordinated with adjacent properties to give unity to the street. But it doesn't say anything about the fence height, and it doesn't give a diagram of where it can or can't be. And I'm not finding fault with this. I'm just saying that in our rewrite, I would be looking as a user to be able to get that information in one place. So I would be able to see this diagram. It would express to me the concept of the public space, the transition space, the private space, and it might give me a few examples of how fence could be used and what the heights are. And then it would refer me to, for instance, the rules and regulation page for the fence and the illustrations appendix that shows the fence details. Is that kind of what we're...
I think it's a good way to do it, yeah, absolutely. Because the book does kind of go over citing, then it goes over citing again, 30-page later, and then it goes over citing again. Same with fences, as you're saying, you know, in the index. So if it can all be found in one area.
Yeah, I think they wrote it, well, clearly they wrote it based upon area versus topic of
Discussion.
discussion.
Yeah.
And I think
Application, yeah.
this book was, the way people process information has changed. I mean, we pick up a phone and we expect to see what we need to see immediately.
Right.
So having the information more accessible, I think, will be helpful in today's day and age. And when later when technology improves and they start projecting it
Yes.
onto our eyelids.
Funny, actually, on this,
Which page are you on?
that 64, that diagram on the bottom left corner.
Oh yeah, so it shows fence.
Yeah, so if you look on the right-hand side of the whole image, you'll see probably what's about a 4-foot high
Mhm.
type 2, and then it looks like it goes to a taller board fence in the back corner.
And I think, here, you guys note this portion here, under that diagram in very small text. I think this is where things get picked up on, and then they become a policy or procedure, but it's not what was originally intended.
Right.
It reads, along lot frontage, fences over 4 feet high or board fence is not approved.
Mm-hmm.
So I could easily say, the way it's written, along lot frontage is above it, and it almost looks like a period. And then below it, it says, with a capital, fences over 4 feet high or board fence is not approved. To me, they're clearly showing a taller 4-foot fence, a fence taller than 4 feet on both sides and the rear of the properties.
Yeah.
But so it gets, I think things get a little confabulated in there.
Yeah.
So,
Like they had the idea of
Go back to page 63, next page.
63.
Right. There's two houses. The one on the left is Cooster,
Mm-hmm.
the other one used to be a doctor. Now, this is a place where this guy might say, well, I got dogs and I got very little yard. Like Cooster's got very little yard there. I don't think he cuts any grass. But anyway, now he might be 12 feet away from the front door to the end, to the sidewalk,
Mm-hmm.
his property. Now, if this was 4 feet high, okay, this is probably 38 inches, which is standard, 36,
Yeah.
38 inches.
Yeah.
Now, if this is 4 feet high, you'll probably have another 8 inches on this. You know, but that's what I was getting at about, you know, out here. Now, if he wanted a gate and a 6-foot fence between the houses,
Yeah.
which is 12 feet there, you know, you'd have to start at the house. Don't bring it out to the sidewalk.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
Right. You don't block somebody else's property. I was just in this, but I just spotted here.
I think one of the sorry.
no, I just wanted to give us a 5-minute warning because we're only noticed till 2 p.m. because there was a conflict here.
Oh, okay.
So, you please finish what you were going to say, John H., and then I was just going to ask you about when you could take a look at images.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can definitely research images. I think the concern, that's a great sighting, bless you, John, in town, but I think as you, Stephen, are concerned with and wanting to elaborate on is the subdivisions like Sachin's Path. So, John, you gave us the example. John, let me ask you a question. So, you had this lot, right, next to the state police. So what if this guy does the same exact thing with a 5-foot, you know?
Yeah.
And then what if this guy does the same exact thing?
You can't because this is a street.
Well,
Yeah, well,
I know.
I-
Hypothetically.
I guess.
So let's say we have 3 lots with that same,
Right.
is that appropriate?
Well, all depends where his house is. If his house is way up front,
Right, then no. Right.
you know, you got to find, what the hell is that word they use? I always use harmony without monotony, when you got
Right.
5 or something
Yeah.
in a row.
So, yeah, so is that appropriate or not? I mean, Sachem's Path, I'm sure the houses are
If-
probably more or less
if that-
cited exactly the same,
Right, and-
which is technically appropriate in this book.
And you bring up an interesting point, and what it's confusing, it's part of what's confusing me when I sit and listen at the meeting, when this particular project is talked about. Is it that fences are being used inappropriately despite the fact that they're being used the way they're said to be used in the guidebook? Or
Right.
is it there's not landscaping in place that has any maturity? And it
Right.
seems very foreign to people because I think what happened over there, well, I know what happened over there. It's a subdivision that was built the way a developer would love to build a subdivision. You come
Yeah,
in,
like
you build a whole bunch of houses
Yeah.
in phase 1, and you move on to phase 2. The downside of that is that if they're not, I don't want to use wealth as but it's expensive to put mature plant material in place.
Right, absolutely.
It's,
right from the
I mean, it's not a blue collar or white collar, it's not a moderate income,
Yeah.
150%. You might buy a couple of nice specimen trees or plants that are more mature, but, I mean, a hedgerow, you could plant privet around your house that costs as much as the down payment on your house.
Right.
And not a lot of people can do that now.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that is part of what the concern is that it's going to look like a bunch of fence versus in other locations where it goes in, it's mitigated by the plant material.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
But does that change how we're supposed to affect the guidelines?
right. That's a tough question.
Which is why I'm thinking if we get this worked out now,
Yeah,
it will be much easier to have that discussion
at the table.
at the table.
Yeah, right.
Because we've already agreed that what's in the book
Right.
is in the book and this is what we want to follow.
Right.
And then it becomes, I think it helps to make it helps to make the discussion about, well, what's the concern? Well, the concern is that it's all wood and there's no landscaping.
Right.
Well, then how do we, work on that? Okay,
Okay, the board.
because one quick second, because I'm on a self-imposed deadline with some of this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to keep track of it. Can you have some images for us at the next meeting?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool, you're good with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And if you can't, you can't, but if you can, we'll count on you for that, because then we
Yeah.
can talk about this with Val here and kind of wrap up a recommendation and get it to the group.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And what I would encourage is just think about it a little bit more between now and next week too,
Right.
okay? Now, we are noticed only till 2, so,
Just take a picket, pointed picket.
Yeah.
right? There's very few of them,
Yeah,
because, a dog can jump it,
yeah.
but when he misjudges his jump and he hits the picket, he hangs balls up. I understand, these have a top, a dog will hit that with his paw and pull himself over.
sure.
Looking at this, you're gonna have, but I'm just saying, there's two types of approved. Now go back to these two pictures. This is on Pleasant Street. Their fence is brought out to their property line.
Yeah.
This is brought out to his property line. Now, these fences have been there since I was a kid. These-
And that's a 4-foot solid fence.
No,
That's 5.
no,
That's
it's
5?
foot, yeah. Anyway, it goes to here. All right, now somebody just recently
I'm
asked,
listening.
he asked for, but basically, this good book, guidebook here says, the first guidebook, 1967,
Mm-hmm.
says, board fences should not be approved on the street,
Yeah.
street side of the
Yeah,
property.
yeah.
It says it, but it's there, but we keep going on and approving it. All right?
But John, there's a historical precedent to approve it.
Oh, the historical precedent, yes, there is.
So why wouldn't we approve it?
Harmony without monotony. The existing area, are there any board fences in the rest of the area, or just one house is gonna be built?
Right, but is it harmony, this is where the industry discussion is. Is it harmony in the sense that there's fence, or is it harmony in the sense that they're all picket fence and there's only 3 of them? Because to me, that's monotony.
That's monotony, okay.
So that's why it'd be good to have a discussion with everyone about it
Yeah.
and come up with it.
I'm
Okay,
just saying, this is just.
I don't know what the open meeting stuff is, I don't want to go over more than a couple of
Now,
minutes.
next meeting is,
Wednesday, same bat time,
wait a minute, I gotta hear some,
same bat channel.
what the hell is it? What the hell are you doing? You dumb bastard. There it is, okay, here we go.
Date of next meeting is the 16th at,
Yeah, but I had.
I believe it's 1 PM. It is on the town website,
Okay.
correct? Under the calendar, it's always under the calendar.
It's under the
It'll be under
calendar,
the
yeah.
calendar for Wednesday,
29th.
May 16th. And it's either at 1 or 3 PM.
Right. These are the map
Or
we were
some other
working
time.
on,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what we come up with. So if you see this, you know the difference.
Yep.
Yes.
I got that one.
Okay, so, again, we're over, John, so I don't want to be talking about stuff. Can we
I'm
get a
not, just trying
motion?
to find out my paper where I wrote down all the
Okay.
minutes for the month of May.
Oh, before we adjourn, will you make a motion to approve the minutes of,
The 9th,
no, we don't have those yet, of March 28th?
probably don't have it.
We received the minutes of March 28th.
May 9th,
I understand. We received the minutes of March 28th, back a little while ago. Will you make a motion to approve them? It's on our agenda. we need to approve minutes.
Okay,
Would you make a motion to do that?
March 28th,
The minutes of March 28th.
right here. Okay.
Yes.
All right, yeah, sure, I'll make a motion.
Okay, and all in favor, aye.
All right.
Okay, so the minutes have been approved.
This one is
for
May
yeah.
9th, right here. That's the last one.
And then a motion to adjourn? There's only two of us.
Wait. I got to straighten one thing out in the mind at a time.
I know,
That
but-
don't mean nothing, they're not here.
You're the guy who got written up in the Attorney General thing, not me,
For what?
for open meeting or something, right?
No, the open meeting, if there's nobody here, you can have a meeting, you say when it starts, not when it stops.
Okay, can you make a motion to adjourn our meeting, and then if you want to look at your stuff, more than welcome, would you mind?
You're in a hurry.
Well, there's someone else that needs
There's
to
people
use
coming in the door,
John.
John.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
People coming to the door, yeah.
Aye. Well, they were standing outside, they're being courteous.
I know, yeah. Anyway.
The other
I'm
news,
not just trying to rush you out.
as soon as that fire station's built, we can't meet in the training room anymore
Why?
because it's going to be only used by police and fire.
Where's the HCC gonna be?
I don't know. And this room is reserved on Tuesdays for finance. This is like a year away. But
Wow.
John, when,
yeah.
not Carol, Kathy's working night.
Yeah.
Right? In daytimes we do inspections, right?
Yeah.
So is the workload, since she started coming to the meeting, and it's increased quite a bit, her trying to do your job, we'll say, you know?
Right.
So is she getting time for that?
Yeah, she gets time. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she gets paid for that.
Okay.
Not out of here on our goodwill, John.
You're moving into administration next?
What?
I said, are you moving into administration next?
No, I'm not even going into the thing. The only thing I'm gonna move is two things, my bowels and move out the door. Steve,
You can dress you up, but you can't take you out.
well, we might have to, you know, like I say, the way this is going, the four of us are gonna get more done than 8 members on the HCC.
Well, that's why we try to keep it small, but we just have to keep moving along, and we'll get there. But quick,
Thank you.
no, thank you.
Hey,
I
Lisa.
want to go out so if there's people out here, they know they can.
The lights are right there. Are you gonna leave the lights on? It doesn't matter how long we sit here, as long as nobody's
I think
here.
we scared him away.
Found John.
What's that?
I found you. Is that you?
Oh, yeah.
Nantucket Harbor?